All right, so if you have your book out, I'm going to want you to turn to, find it here. Mine is page 1-53. And at the top it says AIA CAD layer naming conventions. So 1-53, yours might be within a page or two of that. 4.9, okay, 1-4.9. Mine's an old book. Okay. So we're going to talk about CAD layer naming conventions today. You'll have a couple of assignments that will be assigned today as well. Let me just come here and show you real quick. You'll have one called template file, which we'll talk about, and AIA CAD layers. Okay. All right, so let's talk about layers and naming them. Does the idea of layers kind of make sense to everybody? Are there any questions about layers so far? Not yet, maybe, but there will be. Eventually, right? There will be. But I just want to remind you that layers they organize our drawings, right? We place things that are similar architectural elements on the same layer. So visually we can turn them on and off, which really means freeze or thaw, of course, right? And it also gives a line weight association with our layers here. Now, the technical term for what layers do with regards to line weight is it's a color-dependent line weight system. Okay, so that means that we assign a layer to an object, right? And that object is grouped by architectural element, and that layer is assigned a color. Okay, and that color represents a pen weight, all right? And our pen weights, if you remember, they are in the back of your book, like third to the last page, okay? I may or may not have said this last time. I want you to, I think I did say it. When you are creating layers, right, we have our layer properties icon right here that brings open our layer manager. I want you just to use these index colors 1 through 9, and then these colors down here 250 through 254. Okay, so those are really going to be the only the only colors we're going to be using in this class. You could choose another color up here, right? So for example, if I pick that color, it's color number 112. And if I look in my color line weight file, I do see that 112 is a pen number 8, right? So you think, well, it's on my chart, it's here, why can't I pick this green? I like it a lot more than that green, right? And the answer is just to maintain uniformity within whatever environment you're working, essentially, right? If you're working in an office and everybody's using AutoCAD, they all know how it works, right? We all know that all of these colors have a pen weight associated with them. But the problem is that, very quickly I can identify color number 3 and know it's not the heaviest, not the second heaviest, but the third heaviest, because I know immediately what that color of green means, right? I could come up here and find its equivalent, but it's not as recognizable on the screen as this color, right? And so other people working in your office, I think, they're going to be very used to these colors. There might be a few up here that they're used to, but by far and away, they have a sense for these, right? And so for you to be able to work with other people and to maintain uniformity, you just all want to kind of stay within the same color system. Even though technically you could come up here and say, oh, I'm going to use color number 92, right? Knowing that it has a thick pen weight and whatever. But for the sake of your colleagues, just kind of stick with these index colors down here, okay? Okay. Let's talk about I'll just go through creating layers and naming them, and we'll talk about the formal naming system for layers, okay? When we meet again on Thursday, the idea of a color-dependent line weight system will make a whole lot more sense, because that has to do with printing, okay? And we're going to print on Thursday, so a lot of that terminology will make a little bit more sense when we meet again. First thing, I'll just do a quick overview here. Layer 0, we don't want to draw on layer 0 or def points. Those are two default layers that are generated in our AutoCAD system. and they have specific purposes. Depth points is used with dimensions, when we create dimensions, and layer 0 is used when we create blocks. Okay, so they both have special definitions, and you don't really want to use them for everyday drawing. Okay, so to create a new layer, we're going to come up to our create new layer, click. We're going to give it a name. You know, right now all we know is if we wanted to create a wall layer, we would call it wall probably, right? And hit enter. We make sure that it is showing it's thawed or on, right? We're going to use the terms on and off, even though that's not technically on and off. We have the lock, we have the non-printable option, and then we have the color. We're going to click on color. Walls are going to be the heaviest pen weight, right? Color 1, 2, and 3 are considered the heaviest pen weights, and we have kind of the heavy, medium, and light of the heaviest pen weights, right? Color 4, 5, and 6 are the medium pen weights, and we have the heavy, medium, and light of the medium pen weights. And then we have 7, 8, 9, and those are going to be the lightest pen weights. And then we have the heavy, medium, and lightest of the lightest pen weights. Okay. These colors down here, 250, 250 through 254, those are going to be gray tones. This is going to be the heaviest gray tone, and this is going to be the lightest gray tone. And when we print on Thursday, I'll show you a little bit more how those kind of work. Okay. All right, so we have our wall layer. We are going to assign a color. Click. Okay, and we've assigned a color. We have a line type option, right? Continuous means a solid, continuous line. If I want to change that, I click on it, and I can hit load, and I can pick whatever other line weight I want, right? So we're going to stay away from these ACAD layer or line types, and we're going to start, if we want to choose another line type, we'll start at batting and go all the way down to zigzag and choose these types of line weights, okay? So I'm just gonna hit OK, and I'm gonna leave that alone for now. I just want a solid line. We're gonna always leave line weight default, and the reason we're leaving line weight default, we don't ever change that, is because we are going to use what's called a CTB file to print to give a line weight, all right? We've assigned a color here, a CTB file that you will all get next time, will give a line thickness, right, to our lines defined here. As opposed to, this is kind of a different way of going about assigning a line weight, right? So I could give a thickness to my line here by choosing one of these line weights here, but then my CTB file wouldn't rule the line weight, okay? That's pretty important because in an office, so for example, when I worked at AJC, we had a couple of different clients that had their own AutoCAD standards, right? So National Park Service, they wanted you to use AutoCAD, they wanted you to draw things a certain way, they wanted you to dimension things a certain way, they wanted you to set up their sheets a certain way, and they wanted you to use their pen colors when you printed, right? And so what is nice about this system is that instead of creating 400 layers and assigning a line weight through the layer dialog box, which is time consuming, I can change these line weights with a little file that is predefined, right? Instead of coming in and clicking and changing and clicking and changing and clicking and changing, I have one little file that allows me to change these line weights on the fly. And so when a client comes in and says, we want you to use our line weights, they just give you a file and you don't have to change anything, okay? So this is kind of an effort of AutoCAD to remain a little bit generic, right? All right, so we've created a layer wall and we have a color associated with it. It's a continuous line weight. Everything looks good, right? I can assign a layer by number one, I could draw with it, right? So I could come up here and drop down, click on wall, click on line, and start drawing. Escape, escape, looks good. I could grab these two lines, use the drop down, change them to wall, escape, escape. I could match properties, M-A, enter, click on the one I like, click on the other ones that I want to change. Okay, I zoom in here, I do a blue selection to grab that, blue to grab that, blue, oh, nope, too close, or sorry, too far away. There we go, blue to grab that, right? Okay, so that's how we're going to create layers, that's how we're going to establish characteristics in our layers or settings, and then this is how we're going to assign layer associations to our geometry in our drawings. Okay. All right, so I'm going to open my layer properties manager back up, and we're going to look at how we're going to start naming our layers, all right, because there is a system. And I just want to remind you that there are a lot of professions that use AutoCAD, not just architecture, right? We have civil engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, structural engineers, mining engineers, people who 3D print, right? In addition to architects. And so there are a lot of different people that use AutoCAD, all right? So the way that we name our layers is important, especially if we are working with other people on a project, right? So if I'm an architect and I'm working with a structural engineer, right, our drawings are going to be compared, and they're going to be, in a way we'll talk about later in the semester, brought into the same drawing at the same time so we can look at them together, right? We want to know where all of our structural columns are in accordance or in comparison with our walls, right? We want to make sure they line up and they're not in the middle of the space, and it's called coordination, right? So essentially, when we're working on a project, the architectural drawing, we will XREF in the structural drawing so we can coordinate the two items, okay? But we need to know in that coordination whose layers are whose, right? And so this naming system helps us do that. If you look at your book, okay, we are going to name our layers according to the National CAD standard, so NCS. You can find this online. If you Google, let me open up another window here. If you Google National CAD Standards, bless you, right, there's a ton of things that pop up. And you click on this first one, and here we are, right? So we can, new in NCS version 6, right? They're just people that kind of do this for a living. They keep the standard updated, right, so that we all are drawing the same way. So we're drawing all of our layers, or we're naming all of our layers correctly, we're drawing things the right size, and everybody has a guide to keep things consistent, okay? So the way that we're going to name things now is according to the National CAD standard. And if you look at your book, okay, there is a system. Now, let me show you what that system is. If I have a wall, I'm going to click on this to rename it. Instead of just being called wall, I'm going to call this A-wall-wood. Okay. Now, what is the word I'm looking for? Anyway, what this does is it gives an identifier. So we have that first kind of discipline code. So A represents architectural. Okay. If you had structural drawings, it would be S, mechanical M, plumbing P, electrical E, right? You can also, and this is another variation of this, it could be 2 letters. So it's either a 1-letter or 2-letter identifier. So A or AE, SE, CE, EE for electrical. But essentially you're going to have an identifier or a discipline code, okay? The way that the rest of the format functions is you have a dash in between words, and the words are 4 letters to the best of your ability, right? Every now and again we break it. But this tells me that this is an architectural layer. It is a wall, so we have our major category, architectural category in this case. And then we have a minor category or a descriptor, right? And they're 4 letters with dashes between them. So A-wall-wood tells me this is a wood wall, right? So it's a wood stud wall. You will likely, when you start working in an office, you'll likely have what we call a standard or a template file created in your office. You know, they generate it for you, but you'll easily have a couple hundred layers in that standard, right? If you turn the page in your book, you're going to see a list, right? You're going to see this list of layers that are very common to have in most drawings. Okay. All right, so we have A-wall-wood. Now, these are going to be probably a little hard to get used to at first, but this is how everybody functions, and so I think my philosophy on it is get used to it sooner than later. You know? So let's create a couple more here. All right, I'm going to create one for windows. A-, and windows are called glazing in architecture, G-L-A-Z, glazing, And let's give it another descriptor, something like wood. Maybe it's a wood window. Enter. Okay. So I know that A-wall-wood is a red pen weight because it's cut, right? I think one of the hardest things when you're creating these layers for all of you will likely be, what color do I associate with it, right? At first, I'm going to give you kind of the freedom to kind of try it out at first. And then, well, I have another document I can give you to look at anyway. But I want you to be able to think about it in terms of, if I have a floor plan and it's cut, right, I have walls, I have doors, and I have windows. And the walls are the thickest, doors and windows are going to grade down, right? We have medium type stuff, which is going to be the furniture and equipment kind of in that mid-range. And then we have the stuff on the floor, right? We kind of talked about that, which is going to be the lightest items, okay? So if I'm looking at the walls, right, the heaviest of the 3 heavy pen weights, red, okay, great. If I'm looking at glazing, I have walls, doors, and windows. You know, you could probably think, well, is a door or a window thicker? Well, we can guess, right? We'll just say it's the thinnest of the thick pen weights. Okay, all right. Now, what's going to really clarify this is when you start printing and when you actually see how these line weights print, you'll start figuring out you might want to shift some of your pen weights a little bit, right? But in general, this is a good rule of thumb to follow. Okay. All right, let's create a few more. Before we do that, let me just I want to show you in the book, all right? So we have the layer naming conventions on one page, and if you turn the page, it says, it has a thing kind of at the top that talks about there are some other categories of items, right? So annotation. Annotation it's items in a set of drawings that describe things, right? So we have architectural elements like doors and windows that show you the architecture of the space, right? But then we have things like dimensions and leaders with text and keynotes and things like that that describe those items, you know, by giving them a dimension or telling you what it is, and that is annotation, okay? Annotation, yep.
Would grid lines be in the annotation
yes.
file? Yeah.
Absolutely, yep. So annotation, they're going to have an A-anno designation. So it's A-anno, annotation, and then dash, describe what it is. Dimensions, keynotes, legends, notes, note plot, grids would fall in that category, of course, right? So you do grid, dash grid. I'm not going to worry about the next section of elevations and sections. We'll talk about that when we get to elevations and sections. And then that next page has just a listing of a bunch of general different layers and what is on them essentially, right? So they're grouped by category, and some of the categories seem a little odd, like if you have a piece of millwork, you know, a cabinet, it's an A-floor layer. You're thinking, well, why is it an A-floor layer when it's, you know, a piece of millwork? Well, it sits on the floor, right? So A-floor-case, right? So that's casework. Or A-floor-HRAL, handrail. It's a handrail sits on the floor, so it's called a floor handrail, right? Good or bad, it is what it is, right? And pretty soon you'll be speaking layer language, you know, to your architecture friends. And criticizing others who mislayer their objects and drawings. Funny enough, but you'll get used to this pretty quick. So the A-anno layers, those are annotation layers. The A-area are going to be things like area calculations and takeoffs. Ceiling, A-CLNG, a ceiling, are ceiling layers. So things like ceiling tiles and lights and projectors and different things like that, that type of equipment will go on the ceiling. A door is doors. A equipment will be things like, well, equipment, right? So if you have furnaces or chillers or, you know, different pieces of equipment that sit on the floor, that's what that will be. A-floor, things that sit on the floor, casework and level changes like ramps or stairs. Morning. Patterns or signage or toilet partitions and bathrooms, those different types of things, they sit on the floor. Glazing are going to be windows. You have not just the window, but you have things like a windowsill and a windowsill and I was going to say a frame, but it looks like the frame's integral in this one. Roof is the roof, of course. Walls are the walls, but there's different types of walls. We have, well, we're not going to do interior walls, but we have firewalls and full height walls, and there's going to be walls of different construction like wood or steel or brick, right, that you want to designate. So those are going to be the major architectural categories, right? They have an A in front of them. We also have civil layers. So the civil, we have annotation, build, you're going to have different things that you're going to categorize as civil engineers, right? So you'll have things like annotation, and you'll have property lines, and you'll have sewer lines and topography and natural gas and utility type stuff, right? And fire lanes and parking striping. So all of those items are organized in the civil layers, right? And there's electrical and fire protection and all etc. We'll say etc. But we're going to focus mainly on the A layers for now, okay? And again, it's pretty important that you layer your you name your layers correctly, because that establishes who's responsible for that object in that drawing, right? So if you give your drawing to an electrical engineer and they are drawing in there and they're trying to figure out, which walls are correct, because maybe somebody in their office has drawn some walls in the drawing, they will know which walls are architectural and which are drawn by somebody else by usually the layer, right, if you're correct about naming them, okay? So get used to it. It's important. It's okay. Anyway. All right. I will also say that there is room in this system to grow, right? So because we have an identifier, we have a major and minor category that are descriptive. You can, if there's not a layer on the list, right, or an object on the list that you are creating these layers from, you can make it up, right? So, for example, if I have a wall, maybe we'll make something weird up, like a plastic wall, right? And you're looking here and you're like, I don't see plastic wall anywhere, right? Okay, but I do know how the system works. So I could type A-wall-PLST, plastic, enter, right? And somebody may say, what does PLST mean? And you'll say, oh, it means plastic. But they will know what A-wall means, right? They'll be able to identify what that object is. And they may have to ask you, but at least what you've done makes sense, right? So if there is something that is not on the list, you can generate it using the system, okay? Now, I'm going to prep you for your first assignment, okay? Template file. With that knowledge in mind, what I'm going to start having you do as an assignment is I want you to start creating a template file in AutoCAD, all right? You haven't done a lot of assignments yet, but as you move through the semester, you'll do a lot of assignments. And things like creating layers in your drawings every single time you start an assignment is very time consuming, right? Can you see that? Like if I say, hey, you need to draw a floor plan, you open up a blank file, you save it, right? And then you think, oh, I need to create the floor plan, so I have to draw it, which is a lot of work, right? But then it has to be layered correctly. If you had a drawing that is called a template file that already had all of those layers created and saved in there that you started that file with, you wouldn't have to create those layers to start your assignment, right? If you start with just a blank AutoCAD file, layers won't be included in that, and you'll have to generate all of them with the correct names and the correct color associations and eventually some other visual qualities, okay? So I want you to start creating a template file, and the first thing that you will put in your template file will be your layers, all right? So I'm going to talk about how to create a template file, and then I'm likely going to say that, hold on, just one second. Let me look through where's our template? Okay. Thinking that maybe the template, I couldn't quite remember, maybe the template file had yep, okay. All right, so if you look on page 2-15, or somewhere in that range, there is an assignment called template assignment, and this will lead you through how to exactly create a template file, which we're going to do in class as well. But it has you create 4 different, looks like layers here, and it tells you what color they need to be, okay? I would suggest obviously creating the layers you need for the assignment, but you may also want to start generating some of the most common layers for your template assignment, right? Common layers are going to be things that are in every architectural project, right? And right now you're thinking, oh, I don't really know which ones are needed, right? You'll get to know what is needed. But there are always walls in a building. There are always doors in a building, right? There are always windows in a building. So as you look down this list of layers, if you generated all of these architectural layers, you'd be great, right? It's a lot of layers. But things like you could look down and say, well, okay, I know I'm going to need something. I know I'm going to need dimensions or text. So probably create those layers. I know that I'll probably need something like the door layer. I know I'll need probably a millwork layer, right? So floor case. I'll probably need glazing, right? Windows. I'll probably need a couple of wall layers, right? So you could maybe guess maybe about 10 layers that you know are in every project, right? And those would be good layers to have in your template file, because from now on it would be a good idea to use your template file to start every assignment, right? Does everybody kind of understand the idea of a template?
Template also save all your settings, right?
Yes.
So like your, yeah.
So the template file, yes. So you'll go in there and you'll essentially create the ideal file, right? So if somebody said, hey, I want you to draw a floor plan, you'd say, I'm going to open my template. It's blank. It doesn't have any viruses associated with it. There's no drawing in there to mess up what you're currently drawing. But it does have all of the settings that you need to start a file. So you'll set the precision. You'll turn maybe the grid on or off, right? You will create some layers in there so that you can immediately start working. It has all the information you need and all of the settings you need in it. Yes. Over the course of the semester, we'll learn more things and you'll be adding to your template, right? So right now we're learning layers. And so it makes sense to add layers to your template because that's what you know. And when you start a brand new assignment, you don't have to create layers every time, right? We'll learn how to create dimensions. We'll learn how to create text. We'll learn how to put a title block in your template file, right? So eventually you'll have all of these things in there that will help you, more effectively draw, okay? All right, so let's talk about how to create your template file, right? Does this layer naming convention kind of make sense? Are there any questions about it? Other than just do it, right? Just do it. Okay. I'm going to close out these floor plan layers here. Okay, and I'm going to start the template file drawing. So the way that I would go about it, and let me just, before I actually start doing that, let me show you what would happen if I, wanted to start a brand new assignment. I would come up here and I'd click on new drawing and I would read the instructions and I think, okay, time to draw. Wait a minute, I don't have any layers created. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and boop, 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 boop. And then I have to, name them all. And then I have to associate a color with them. So that takes 10 minutes, right? And that's only if you have just a few. Okay, we're done with that, right? All right, time for me to, this is in decimal. So I'm going to change my units. All right, so I go from decimal to architectural. And I change my precision from 1/16 to a 32nd. Okay. And let me remember what else we've got here. Yeah.
What would you want your angle precision at?
Oh, you're right. So this one's going to be probably to the second decimal. Yep. Good, good. Okay. So we've changed that. And, I don't really like this grid back here, so I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to come down here to my grid setting and turn that off. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, this is one of Jeff's pet peeves. He doesn't like this UCS icon right here to show on his drawing, right? It may not have affected you very much yet, but this thing kind of gets annoying. And it gets annoying in that when you start drawing and you start zooming in and out a lot, sometimes it gets really big and it will cover your drawing area. So his preference is to turn it off, and I think I agree with that. So if you come up to view and you go down to display, UCS icon. It's a toggle, so I click on and it turns off, right? You can also type UCS icon, enter, and you could type off or on at the command line, okay? So, I mean, that didn't really take me that long, of course, but, you know, if you have to do it every single time you start a brand new drawing, you know, and your drawings only are going to get more involved, it does tend to take a lot of time, okay? Now, so that's how I would start an assignment without a template file, okay? If I had a template file established, which I do oh, they wiped this computer. Hold on a second, let me go grab something real quick. And by grab something, I mean online. Okay. Oops, shoot, let's see. Okay. See, very nice to have Google Drive everywhere, right? So I can go and grab things. Okay. 25, there we go. Okay, so here is a template file. I didn't create it. This was for our 2510 class, which is the residential construction class, where they kind of take their template file to the extreme, right? But if I had a template file established, then instead of opening up a blank file, I would open up my template file, okay? And I've got this stored on my desktop, of course, but there is a place where AutoCAD will start remembering that template file. So honestly, every time you start opening your file, it remembers and it brings up that template file. So I'm going to open my file. I'm going to go to my desktop, and this is a DWT file. Drawing template files are DWT files. Okay, they have a red icon, and I'm going to do my Arch 2510. I'm going to hit open. So this is how I would generally start a project file, right? So this is called an annotation block, and what's helpful about having this little guy kind of floating in space is that I have all the annotation I need to work on a drawing. I don't have to go find it somewhere, right? So I have a section marker. This is a little bit above and beyond what we're doing here, but just so you know, right? I've got my window tag, my door tag, my another door tag, a break line, all of the things that I would need to work on any architectural drawing, okay? I also have a bunch of layers created, right? And all of those layers have color associations and line types, and they're all nice and wonderfully set, right? So now, instead of worrying about creating, 100 layers every time I start a drawing, they're already in there. Great. Another thing that this drawing has is it has some text styles created, right? Which doesn't make any sense for you guys yet, but I think you inherently understand the idea of the importance of text in a drawing file, right? So we have some text styles generated. Oh, I didn't know they put papyrus in there. Good old papyrus. You guys will start getting to know fonts, really, maybe if you don't already. I went through my papyrus stage. It's everywhere, right? Everybody thinks it's the coolest text for a little while, right? There's another instructor, her name's Naima, and she hates papyrus. Like, she'll take points off for if you use papyrus. It's funny. The interior designers really like papyrus. And then we have dimension styles created, okay? So the dimension styles have the appropriate text and the appropriate line weights on the extension and dimension lines already ready to go, right? I don't have to define any of these things. And then we have a leader style that's already generated. Great, right? I also have, and this will come later, I also have, probably at the very bottom here, I have some title block stuff created, right? Again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet, but it will when we start talking about it. These are all of those tags, those drawing tags I talked about, okay? But this drawing is essentially set up for success. I also have, this is an 11 by 17 inch page, and it is 11 by 17 in size, so I don't even have to set my pages up, right? which again doesn't make sense to you, but it will eventually. These are already, they're ready to print from, right? So I have a 22 by 34 and I have an 11 by 17, right? This drawing is ready for me to start drawing. It's blank, it has all of the settings available. So that's kind of essentially the importance behind a template file, okay? Template files, they have the extension .dwt, all right? I'm gonna close this one out. So you are going to create a template file and you're going to put whatever information you can at this point into that. And over the semester, you're just going to continue to add to it, right? When we learn text styles, you're going to add text styles to your template file, right? So that whenever you start a new drawing, you have that information available, okay? The way that we are going to generate a template file is, I'm just going to open up a blank drawing, okay? And you're going to set your settings. You're going to add your layers correctly named with the correct color associated with them. You are going to, you know, do some visual settings, turn on the grid on and off. This is in the book, right, for the assignment. You're going to change your units and precision, and that's really all you know at this point, right? But it's something, and it's helpful. And then the actual translation from a DWG file, which is what we're in, a drawing format file, to a template is very easy. It's a matter of saving it in that format. So File, Save As, and I'm gonna, before I do anything actually, I'm going to come down here and you see it says AutoCAD 2018. I'm gonna drop down and I'm gonna change to a drawing template, DWT file extension. Now I did that first because AutoCAD has a template file in its systems folders, right? And it likes you to save your template files there. If you want to, that's great. If you don't, you can save it on your desktop or at home, wherever you want to save your template, okay? I'm just going to save mine in here and I'll call it, you know, we'll call it SB template. So I'm going to store my template in AutoCAD's template area. I'm going to make it a DWT and hit save. We're just going to hit OK right here. And essentially, do you see that this has been changed from a DWG to a DWT extension, okay? I'm gonna close out of that. And, you know, once I've set up my template file, added layers, created the settings I need, right? To use that, when I open up AutoCAD here, now if you save this just at school, it will only be available just at school, right? If you create this DWT file on your laptop or your home computer, it will be available on your home computer, okay? But to access this, because I saved it in AutoCAD's template file location, I'm going to use this drop down where it says templates, and there is SB's template file. Right? I don't even have to really remember where I saved it if I save it within the template structure, right? So I click on that, and it opens up that file that I generated. Okay. If I make some changes, you know, I think, oh, I need to add my text styles. I go over to annotation, I create my text styles, I do a few things, right? And then I think to myself, well, gosh, I sure wish that those would be in my template file now that opens up on this computer, right? It's pretty easy to update it. You make the changes, File, Save As, right? I'm going to change it again to a DWT format with the same name as the one that I'd already generated. Save, yes, and it saves right over the top of it, right? So that template file is very easy to update. So when we learn a new skill, I'm going to say, add this to your template, right? And it's pretty important to do because your final project will involve template stuff, right? So, you know, of course, it's always easy to say, keep up on it during the semester. But it will help you when the final project comes, okay? So your assignment will be, let me grab, your assignment, one of your assignments will be to start a template file. Okay, a DWT file, and that's kind of the kicker, right? If I get a DWG file submitted, you will lose credit. So make sure that you translate this into a DWT file, not save a DWG file, okay? The template assignment is in your book. It defines what you need to add in there, right? I would suggest, in addition to the layers that are assigned, add a few more, right? Add doors and windows and kind of the most common elements, because it's going to be very helpful to you, right? It won't take very long while you're creating them, and it's very helpful, okay? The second assignment that you're going to have is going to be the AIA CAD layers assignment. Okay, and essentially what you're going to do is, so AIA CAD layers, you are going to take the drawing here that is on CAD Common, and it's called AIA CAD layers. It's one of the very first drawings. This is CAD Common. If I had a suggestion for you all, and I think that Mandy, maybe you've already done this, haven't you? She took her thumb drive and she made a copy of all these files so that she could bring it home with her. And she did that not knowing, well, it's helpful, but not knowing also that some of these files are going to be the starting point for a few of your assignments, right? I try and put them in the assignment on Canvas, right? But you never know. Every now and again it could not work, and you might leave on Friday and go home for the weekend to do your homework, and then you don't have a file, and you know. So if I were to make a suggestion, I would copy this entire folder, right, the one called Drawing under CAD Common, to your thumb drive and take it with you, okay? Drawings, you're going to start by opening up AIA CAD layers, and you are going to create some more layers and associate all the appropriate items on this drawing with those layers, okay? A couple comments about this assignment. I believe in the book, Jeff has you create because Jeff made this book, he has you create a different layer for the interior and exterior walls. I don't think you need to do that. I think you can put all the walls on the same layer, okay? These objects are annotation, right? They're dimensions. We all can hopefully recognize those. This object is also a piece of annotation. It's a door tag, okay? You can put it on the same layer as the door, but you can also put it on an annotation layer, right? I won't dock you for doing either method, okay? So you could create a layer called A-anno-tag, right, which is in our list, and put that on the tag layer. You could also put it on A-door. Yep.
So can we make our template and then open this file in our template? And then just go ahead and start making the changes?
There's a way to do that, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
So this time, we're going to have to do double work. So you'll create your template with your layers, and then, just for some extra practice, you're going to open this, create some layers, and assign them. Yeah. It's a good question, though. Okay. These are going to be stairs, right? So we want to put stairs on one layer. This is going to be, this is a wall layer, okay? So another wall. This is a plumbing fixture, A-floor-P fix. See, we have a language, right? So my husband talk about all the time, right? You have a millwork line. So this is a countertop line. So that's going to be on A-floor-case. We've got a bathtub, plumbing fixture. We have a toilet, plumbing fixture. We have a window, right? That is glazing. We have a glazing tag. Again, you could put this on an annotation layer if you like, or you could put it on a window layer. I'm not going to be that picky, you know, with it. And I think that's it for now, okay? All right. Any questions on any of this so far? Yep.
You want us to be using the layer name conventions that he has in here?
Yes. 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 So here, sorry, that just reminded me of something I also want to bring your attention to, okay? Except for the interior-exterior wall thing, again, I just don't think it's that important. This is a pretty good little guide for probably the most common layers, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 of them. I would put these all in your standard file, your template file, okay? Now, one thing I want to bring your attention to is that, so for example, A-door, okay? A-door, the objects that go on that layer are doors, obviously, but it says the line weight is 0.2 millimeter. And this, I think, I'm just going to give it to you because it's really confusing for students. You look at that and you think, line weight's 0.2. We were working in colors in class, right? What does that mean? And so I always get kind of a mistake happening here that you think, well, I remember that there are numbers in here. No, don't do it. Don't do it, right? Always leave that generic, okay? This is kind of a roundabout way of making you think about your layer, what the color and the thickness of the pen, how they associate, okay? So if you remember, if you go back to your book, okay, if you go to the third from the second from the last line weight file, okay, if you look at the very top left-hand corner, we have color number 1 through 9, all right? If you look at the very bottom of that page, it's this one right here, right? You'll see that pen number 1 is 0.7 millimeter, right? So if I look at that assignment that we have, hopefully I get my thumb on it, A-door is 0.2 millimeter. Okay, so I look at the bottom and I find where it says 0.2 millimeter. So pen number 5 is 0.2 millimeter. Do you guys see that? So that would mean that pen number 5 is 0.2 millimeter. What color is pen number 5? Let's look. What's that? Color number 5. But what color is the color number 5? Blue. Okay, so I just wanted to draw that association so that you guys recognize that we are not changing the line weight in the manager. We are, you know, trying to connect that a color means a thickness, and the thickness is in millimeters, right? And that is shown in your line weight chart right here. Okay, so I went in, you know, when I first started last year teaching, right? So I went through all these assignments and I just wrote the color on there, right? So I wrote, so I didn't have to flip back and forth, right? Like 0.35 is green, so I wrote green next to it so I'd remember, or color number 4, whatever you want to do, okay? All right. Okay, let me just see where we are. I think we, like I said, I think today is kind of a relaxing day in AutoCAD. Not too bad, right? Let's make sure I think we got through everything today. Unless, does anybody have any questions for me? Not too bad, yep.
So I don't have the book still.
Right. So I have, except for, I don't think I've done it in template file, I'll add it, but for example, under AIA CAD layers, right, I have put, you know, most of the things you're going to need here. So CAD layer methodology, except for the one page. So I have to add a page here, but from this point forward, most of them have that in there, so I think you'll be okay.
Okay.
I'll add the actual assignment page to that one document, to the one assignment,
Because,
so you can get it.
and then we have an assignment due tonight too.
That one is,
The basketball court, I think.
okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and look on my laptop because I don't have the book on the PDF format on this one. But I will post those in there, yes. Okay. Any other questions on layers or naming? Yep.
Well, I actually, about the discussion you sent out on Canvas about the Design Now conference, I wasn't able to register for it.
Oh, yeah. That, I think, oh, what's her name? She's not here today. I saw that. She posted a discussion about it. Is that right?
Oh, I thought you posted it.
No, it was somebody else. But if you do register for it, I'm gonna put extra credit assignments on here. Yes.
Okay.
Let me see if I can look. There was an announcement posted on AutoCAD. Discussions here. This one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Elisa. Yeah. So October 4th. So, you weren't able to register?
I wasn't able. I got on. I made logged in, made a sign in and everything like that, but I wasn't actually able to.
Okay. Let me see what I can figure out. But yes, if you guys want to go to that, then I will offer extra credit for sure. Yep. Okay. Any other questions so far? Okay. Yeah, that's it for today.